Dynasty Warriors 8 is the latest action strategy game in a series adored by its fans but overlooked by many others. For those new to the series, you'll be in for a treat. On the surface it looks like a generic button masher, however the simplistic facade hides a complex and detailed strategy game that's both unique and exceptionally enjoyable to play. For long-time fans of the series? Well, I have no idea because this is the first one I've ever played. The game's split into two core modes, Ambition and Story. Story mode is divided into 4 sections, each based on a family from the historical novel Romance of Three Kingdoms. Each level begins with you selecting your character for the oncoming battle. There are over 70 characters in the game, although your options are initially restricted to those relevant to the story. Unlike many other hack and slash games, each officer has specific skills, augmentation and weapon preferences. With over 100 weapons to choose from, each with a myriad of different fighting styles, it's a clever way to force you to experiment with the different gameplay styles on offer. In addition to the handling differences, each weapon has its own affinity, which, like the rock, paper, robot, dinosaur principle, means that each affinity is especially strong or weak against its various counterparts. This is only relevant when you're fighting other officers, and it's made easy to follow by the use of icons above officer heads. The red exclamation mark here, for example, shows that I'm weak against this opponent. However, when I change to my secondary weapon, we now see a blue icon indicating that I'm stronger. Weak opponents like this also offer the opportunity to unleash an unblockable frenzy attack. It's a great way to reward players who pay attention. Battles boil down to one basic premise. You have a map with some objectives that must be met in order to win. There's usually an army between you and your targets, which is where the strategic element comes into play. Each side has 3 types of troops. Officers are characters like the one you play. They're tough, have decent weapons, and can unleash missile attacks. Ranked troops are slightly better than the common troops, and usually command important roles like leading groups of common troops, guarding a base, or holding a gate closed. Common troops are just cannon fodder really, and as can be seen here, seem to enjoy standing around waiting for you to hit them in the face. The morale meter in the top right shows your army's morale. Surprise, surprise. The more officers you beat, the smaller their army will be and the lower their morale, making your victory considerably easier. You have to be careful though, as it works the other way as well. Failing to protect your officers can result in you reaching your final objective with too small an army to make a difference. Although I never really came across that situation, as by the time I got there my characters were pretty kick-ass. The other mode on offer is Ambition mode. Whilst the basic premise for the levels doesn't change, the encompassing structure is considerably different. You start with a base and must complete battles to gain new allies, or officers, materials and weapons. Materials are used to build and upgrade facilities in your base, which allow for battle perks, new weapons, weapon upgrades and so on. Your ultimate goal is to become strong enough for you to win favour of the Emperor. However, the true point of this mode is to challenge yourself and level up your officers. Whilst Ambition mode may seem like a tack-on extra for replay, it's every bit as involved and interesting as Story mode. Another great feature of Dynasty Warriors 8 is the cooperative story mode. Available both local or online, players can take the role of any playable officers in a given chapter. The mechanics of the level don't change much, but you gain access to a special co-op Muso attack that does a mountain of damage and looks fantastic. It might seem like a useless tack on at first, but it's a mountain of fun to play and sadly not something offered by many other titles. Sadly, this is the point of the review where things take a bit of a sour note. We discuss the negatives. As great as the concept is, Dynasty Warriors 8 is riddled with bugs. On many occasions I found myself stuck in an area I wasn't supposed to be, caught in scenery, or on occasion presented with a frozen image whilst the game played on by itself. These weren't overly common, however they occurred frequently enough that I got in the habit of saving my game fairly often. A more disturbing bug I noticed was the considerable slowdown of events when there were numerous enemies or environmental effects on screen. Whilst you deal with the enemies fairly quickly, so the effect doesn't last very long, it was very noticeable in the jarring experience. Another problem impacting the experience were the poor camera controls. The inability to focus, chase or snap in on a particular target meant that you must manually control the camera at all times. This was particularly noticeable when performing combo attacks. If an enemy moves or is knocked out of view, you're left with the choice of either continuing the combo and hoping your attacks are hitting, or adjusting the camera whilst simultaneously trying to time your moves. It wasn't a huge problem, but it was certainly noticeable, and made the game feel a little clunky or outdated. This B-grade feel was further emphasised by the overall presentation of the game. Cutscenes looked okay, but often appeared to be in a lower definition than the rest of the game. During levels, many of the surfaces and textures were noticeably low res, and often took a while to pop. Enemies would often just appear out of mid-air, and destroying structures resulted in a Lego-style breakup, where each polygon bounced joyously up into the air. There was also a noticeable discrepancy with hit detection on items like ballistas or ranged weapons. This was extremely annoying in sections where you had to dodge their attacks whilst getting closer. How do you dodge something you can't see, or that doesn't seem to have a logical area for attack? Add to this the appalling voice acting with repeated use of one-liners, and you'd be forgiven for thinking this is a game from the early PlayStation Xbox era. This is further emphasised by the poor dialogue, although that may just come down to poor translation. I did get the feeling that this was meant to be part of the game's charm, however from the perspective of someone new to the series, I found it to be a disappointing feature. Despite all those negatives, Dynasty Warriors 8 remains a sensational game. There aren't many that manage to mix action strategy and RPG elements with both single and cooperative play and get away with it. And when it comes to fun, Dynasty Warriors nails it on the head. The variance in officers, weapons and fighting styles mean that the game rarely feels old, and you'll be playing long after the core stories are finished. I enjoyed it far more than I thought I would, and I'll be a definite day one purchaser of Dynasty Warriors 9 when it comes out. For gameplay, I gave it an 8.5, for innovation a 9, and for replay an 8. Unfortunately, the glitches and poor presentation couldn't be avoided, so overall that bumped it back to a 7.5 out of 10, which, if you read the Survivor.com rating guide, means that this is an excellent game, arguably genre-defining, and could be considered enjoyable by almost anyone.